is that investors never want to be surprised. They don't want to be blindsided, right? They want to know what's going on. If you want to continue receiving their trust, you'll tell them what's going on, even if it's an unpleasant news. Question number 9 is, how well does the operator communicate? That's really directed at the LPs, but it's really something that's critical as a GP. You've got to operate well with your investors. Now, Apple's way is investors didn't seem to know what was going on. Now, judging from the timeline in the article, as far as the investors were concerned, everything was going well. They received regular reports and distributions, but we know that the wheels were coming off operationally during the summer of 2022 while all this was happening. So obviously things were not all great, but it seemed to the investors everything was great. Then all of a sudden, February of 23, about a year afterwards, Apple's way asked the investors for more money. It's known as a capital call. And that blindsided the investors. Like, what are you talking about? We've gotten distributions, and now you're asking us for money? What's going on? And 2 months later, the lender foreclosed on the property. Now, if you're a GP, the lesson is to always communicate with your investors, especially when things are not going well. Now, it's not a pleasant thing to do. Okay, it really isn't. No one wants to communicate with investors if things aren't going as planned. But the one thing I've learned over the many years, and this doesn't include just multifamily and single-family housing, but also restaurants, is that investors never want to be surprised. They don't want to be blindsided, right? They want to know what's going on. If you want to continue receiving their trust, you'll tell them what's going on, even if it's an unpleasant news. At Nighthawk, we strive to be candid with our investors and treat them as true partners. And again, this is something that's really hard to do because you always want to put on an optimistic tone of voice, but sometimes you just got to be honest with investors. Not every deal is going to go according to plan. And so we communicate our property's performance with our investors, both through financial reports and narrative. The first 90 days after we close on a deal, we actually have live webinars. And then we want to be available to our investors in real time. So if you're an LP, ask yourself this: how well has the operator communicated with you since you contacted them? How frequently do they plan to communicate with you once the deal closes? You can ask them. And then how accessible do they appear to be if you want to talk to them anytime, really? So if an operator is communicating poorly with you when times are good, how do you think they're going to communicate with you when things aren't going so well? Right? So only invest with operators who communicate well and are always accessible when you have questions.